Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am delighted to introduce you to my guest today, Margo Aaron. Margo describes herself as a recovering psychological researcher, an accidental marketer, and she is the host of the popular internet talk show, Hillary and Margo Yell at Websites, otherwise known as #HamYaw. Margo is a regular contributor to Inc. and a prolific writer with fans like Seth Godin, Derek Sivers, and Paul Jarvis. Please join me in welcoming Margo Aaron. Hey, Margo.
Hi, Tammy.
Oh, it's such a treat to have you here. So as you know, we are here to talk about career transitions, meaningful transitions. And I know that you've made several of those yourself. And one of the things that we've talked about is that you've talked about making intentional and deliberate actions. And I have a feeling that that is probably part of the story of some of the transitions you made. So maybe take us back a little ways in history and to where you are now, and tell us a little bit about your background, some of the moves that you've made over the years.
Sure. There's a perfect place to start because I think that in our culture, we have a way of talking about this topic as if making career shifts means you are all over the place. That's what they say. You are undecided. You don't know what you want. You are, quote, figuring things out, which is always comical to me because aren't we all always figuring things out? It's a little redundant.
Yeah.
But it's sort of the famous Steve Jobs saying that like things make sense in retrospect. You can connect the dots backwards. But I like to think of it as we're actually constantly connecting the dots forwards. So when I look at my career trajectory and like when I was making each shift, and I'll walk you through it for your listeners. You guys, nothing about my shifts made sense on the surface, but while I was making them, they made a lot of sense to me. And I think that's what's most important. And that's what I tried to keep front and center. And so I was a literature major who got herself a job as a psychological researcher, meaning I went from the liberal arts to the sciences, got myself into an Ivy League school for a graduate school for psychology, then shifted to marketing, and then started my own business. And so all of that, if you don't know me, could sound like, oh, that doesn't make sense because it doesn't fit the traditional linear narrative that we like. And the way we talk about things, right? When you're an academic, you're supposed to stay in graduate school, you get your PhD, you do research, you get underpaid and undervalued, you become a professor or you go internal. Like there are specific prescribed routes for what these careers look like. Same with marketing. You stay for a few years at the bottom rung, you work your way up, eventually you're a CMO or you run an agency, right? There are prescribed paths. When I first started, I remember I actually wanted to work in media. And I was a literature major and I tried really, really hard because I went to school in Atlanta to get an internship at CNN because that was my dream. Yeah. And I got to CNN and I worked behind the scenes and I thought, well, this is where thinking goes to die. This is not what I thought it would be. And I was crushed. And I was a senior in college thinking like, what am I going to do now? This was my plan. Oh no. And I started thinking, well, what am I interested in? What has a trajectory that works with my specific skill set? And the one thing that I was truly, truly skilled at was writing, writing and understanding people, which is all literature was in my view. Yeah. And so psychologists made a lot of sense. I thought that's a natural transition. Like we already studied a lot of psych theory in order to do heavy advanced literary analysis. So I made that shift and I stayed for a few years in a really amazing lab where we learned about, I was what's called a research interviewer, which means the first line of defense of when you're looking for participants in a research study. And we worked with depressed and anxious patients. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was my first introduction to sales funnels. And so it all sort of comes together in retrospect, but like part of my job was getting the right people in the door. But what What psychology and academia would have you think is that your job is actually to study and understand the theory well enough to get into graduate school and get published. It's not actually about the job that they're giving you to execute on. And so I started to pay attention to this problem of we were getting people in the door, but we weren't attracting the right people. And we were offering free treatment. So this is a really, really expensive problem. And I know anyone who is listening right now knows someone with depression or anxiety. It's a very widespread affliction. And this was a way to get it treated. And I had trouble getting people to come in, give us their information, and accept free treatment. And I was so obsessed with this problem. I didn't understand, more obsessed with this problem than I was interested in actually finding a solution to depression or anxiety. I became fascinated with how do you get people to make decisions in their own best interest? How do you get people to care enough about something? And when I got into graduate school and was asking some of these questions, it became very clear that what I was exploring was actually called marketing and not actually called psychology.
That's so interesting.
And they overlap. I mean, obviously psychology is a huge part of marketing, but I wasn't the right person to be studying psychopathology. The place that I needed to be to make the impact I wanted to make ended up being in the private sector, where you could do real-time studies by changing a word, for example. So I became fascinated with what's called copywriting, which is the use of language to make people take action and behaviors. Some people call this sales. So, and I wanted to know how you could use these forces for good. And that's sort of how I got accidentally into marketing and into that world of, I started in what's called market research, eventually ended up in what's called strategic planning, and jumped into my own business because when I was in the agency world, I realized I didn't want to be my boss. And even though he was great, I love Paul. If you're listening, you're amazing. He was, but it wasn't the trajectory for me. I knew that climbing that ladder wasn't going to give me the fulfillment and satisfaction and truly the impact that I was looking for. So each of those transitions, it wasn't just a compulsive, not thought through decision.
Right.
It was really deliberate based on the information I had at the time on what I knew about myself, what my interests were, and what the opportunities were in that field. I think, for example, in the beginning in academia, a lot of the things that I was promised or what they make seem very, very sexy and alluring, in reality aren't. You become a pool of 300 people competing for 10 jobs across the world and making less than $40,000 a year if you're doing well. And that, when you start looking at the logistics, it wasn't right for me.
So I want to actually, this is fascinating. And I'm curious though, when you were an undergrad and then you went to get a job or an internship at CNN and you sort of saw how the sausage was made, so to speak, it sounds like even back then you had expectations or you had made some assumptions about what it was going to be like. And some of the things that you're even talking about in terms of going into the field of psychology and then becoming an accidental marketer, it sounds like you were kind of looking for the same thing all the way through. It wasn't that your intentions or your interests really changed dramatically, but how you were going to fulfill those had to change through a variety of, let's say, venues that you went through. And so it, like you said, it looks like you just jumped and hopped and skipped and that there was an impulsivity about it. But I'm hearing, I think, a real thread of continuity all the way back to CNN. And just each time you landed somewhere, you said, I know what my it is, so to speak, and this isn't it. So I'm curious if you could just unpack a little bit more what that it was or has been and where that takes you now, because it does, I think it would help people to see that making transitions isn't about changing everything necessarily, right?
Correct.
That there were some things that you've carried with you throughout that mattered to you, that really just were at your core.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, spot on. I would caution people to say that it's easy to talk about in retrospect, and that while I was in it, all of these things were true, but I couldn't have articulated it. I couldn't have said, that I know what the thread is. I was just following it based on how I was feeling. And so the thing that I did was pay attention to my feelings. Like my feelings were data. And I would go, okay, what is the data telling me? So in the CNN experience, for example, I remember looking at a woman I was working next to. I remember exactly what she looks like. And she was in her 40s and she had a couple kids and she seemed to have lost the sparkle, if you will, and that passion, that interest, and it was just a job. And she was kind of sad. And I thought, that is my nightmare. You know, and it's interesting because when I talk to other people, like there's so many worse nightmares if we want to like rank order them. But to me, the thing, it was almost like I was avoiding a quiet life of desperation. That scared the crap out of me. I thought being stuck in something where it's just not bad enough to make a change is so frightening to me. I'd almost rather it be so bad where it's obvious and you're like, I got to get out of here. It's kind of like having a health scare. A health scare makes you change course. It makes you go, oh, okay, I'm going to go to the gym now. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to do, or whatever it is that you need to do. Start meditating.
Right.
I didn't want to get to that point. And I saw this woman and I remember thinking, I'm going to be you if I stay here, because there is a very real chance as I age and as real life responsibilities start to accumulate, that I will have less and less options. So that might be a mortgage, that might be kids, that might be a sick parent, that might be me getting sick, that might be mountains of debt or a divorce or like whatever it is that are the realities that come with life that are unavoidable. Doesn't matter who you are, they're happening in one way or shape or form.
That's right. Absolutely.
And I just remember having that top of mind. And so when I saw this woman, I thought, oh my God, I never want to get to the place where I feel like there's no way out. And I have to start identifying it in the beginning. And so when I saw when I saw her, I thought, okay, what is the next step? Like, what is something that will give me, at least for now, what I think I'm looking for? And so to your point on the thread, I didn't know entirely what I was chasing. I just knew what it wasn't.
Right.
And it was almost like this journey has been me perpetually etching away at figuring out how to articulate it. And it took me years because truthfully, and I think this is true for a lot of us, the language didn't exist. Like we are on the precipice, and certainly true for my generation in their 30s, like the precipice of a paradigm shift. And I was encountering a lot of people who had traditional trajectories that were telling me how to run my life. And I was looking around going, but it changed, but that's not true anymore. And the advice that you're giving me isn't working because I don't necessarily need to update my resume. Like there are other ways to get a job, and I proved it. Like I don't think I've ever had a job I was qualified for, ever. I wasn't qualified to get into Columbia. And you find a way, because there are new rules that govern the connection economy and the modern economy and the attention economy. And there were these shifts happening, and I was hungry for them, and I could feel them. And I also felt how they were intersecting with what I wanted for my life. And the word that I was looking for that I couldn't find is actually lifestyle design. But I had no one in my life who knew what that was. And it wasn't until years later that I got introduced to drinking the Tim Ferriss Kool-Aid and all of that, that I went, oh my God, like there are other people like me that want to design a life around the things that matter to them. But instead, what I looked like at the time it was happening, I probably looked like an entitled millennial, right? Like that stereotype of, you just need to put your head down and work. And I was like, I'm not afraid of hard work. I just don't think this is efficient. Why do you need me to sit here on Twitter when I could do better work for you from home?
Yeah.
And this is a bit of a side tangent, but Tammy, there was a time when I was at the marketing agency where I was sat down and scolded for being efficient. And I was told, yes, I was told that we need to bill more hours. And if I was working like 35 minutes, I could round it up. And it was I was sitting there being like, is this a warped reality? Like, I understand that's your business model, but that's so bananas. And I don't like, this is ridiculous. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of the client's time. Like, you're telling me that if I get better at my job and I can take on more work and help you, that's actually a disadvantage to the business model. Like, what is happening? So there were lots of moments like that where, we would get labeled entitled millennial, being difficult, or whatever it is that you put on somewhere, where I was just going, no, there's a different way. That's all I'm saying. There's a different way, and I'm going to go find it.
Right. It's interesting, as you talk about how there were situations you ended up in earlier on where, you saw something, you didn't like what you saw, you knew that wasn't it. You weren't sure quite what it was or to articulate it. And I'm curious if you experience, because it sounds like you're a very forward-thinking kind of person, that you're always thinking about what's next and trying to find another way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you ever found yourself in the position of realizing you were in a situation that wasn't it, that didn't feel right for whatever reasons. And maybe there was that deep, heavy sigh of, oh, I know so much about what I don't want. I'm sort of sick and tired of not figuring out what I do want. And I don't know if that resonates with you,
Yes.
but I can only imagine that you did go through some of that. And yet somehow you managed to find your way through those sort of heavy sigh moments to the next thing. What do you think drove you to keep going? Because clearly you took some bold steps along the way. I mean, you got into Columbia in a field that you really didn't have much experience in. So how did, a part of me wants to say, how did you do that? Or what do you think got you there or drove you to these new opportunities that you kept encountering, even if they turned out not to be the thing that you really wanted? But the fact that you were able to put yourself in those positions is something that I think people can learn from.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I definitely had the size. And I would say that I struggled with the definition of what I did want for probably longer than identifying what I didn't.
Yep.
And one of the things I think a lot of us top performers struggle with is that we tend to be good at what we put our mind to, but we put our mind sometimes to the wrong thing. And then you're driven by sunk costs. And I would watch a lot of my friends do that, where they'd complain like, it's been 5 years and I'm just about to get this promotion. I mean, it would be stupid to leave now, right? I'd hear the stories they were telling themselves and I think, what? Bail immediately. It would be stupid to stay now because that's your whole life. Your whole life will be a series of like, oh, well, let me make this practical decision. Let me do this. And it's a form of hiding. It's a form of settling. And it's funny, as you're asking this question, I'm thinking like, was there something specific? And I actually think it goes back to a disadvantage I had that was an advantage in the long run, which is I was never the smartest person in the class. Like I was the person that I figured it out pretty quickly that I wasn't going to be the person that tested well, but I was the person who was really persistent and really like I had what Angela Duckworth would call grit. And once And my dad figured this out about me, and I think and modeled it as well, kind of explaining that there's always a way to get what you want if you can be smart enough about it. And so I think I had this inherent belief that the traditional system is just not built for someone like me, and I knew that about myself. And so I was constantly looking for a different way in. So, for example, when I was graduating from college with a liberal arts degree and literally no science classes. I had taken social science classes. I don't think I had taken a single psych course. And I applied I wanted to work at one of the most prestigious research facilities in the country. And I sat down and I went to I think I just emailed the founder because I was like, why not? Or he wasn't the founder. He was the PI, the principal investigator. And I said, here are all the reasons why I'm going to be good at this job for you. And like, you can teach me the rest. And I just made a case for myself. I found out later that that's called pitching and that's called sales. But it was my form of advocating for myself my entire life, because it was same thing with classes. Like I'd have teachers where maybe my test score wasn't that great, but I was going to participate the shit out of that class and I would show up on time and I would get all my homework assignments done. And like all of the other things that I could do well, I did. Mm-hmm. And that ended up making me, ironically, an A student, even though I wasn't the smartest one in the class, and I knew that about myself. So I think that carried through. And every time I wanted to make a pivot, because I wasn't burdened by what the traditional industry would have you expect of how you should behave, I just behaved differently. So mm-hmm. I did the same thing after graduate school where I was looking for marketing jobs and they were like, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, but it does. Let me explain to you. I've been in marketing for 12 years. And I would sit down and I would say, listen, I spent time, I did exactly what I said to you. I was a research interviewer, but that's actually a sales funnel. Let me explain what that looks like, and would explain how we qualified leads, how we turned them into this. And I would use their language because I would literally Google it and be like, these are buzzwords for them. Use those buzzwords, mirror it to them. And I just became an advocate for myself. And at a certain point, certain people will take chances on you. And that's what you have to look for, is that like these doors are mostly shut, but someone somewhere is going to go, this person will figure it out and they will take a chance on you. And I think I always had faith that that would happen because I knew that if I put my mind to something, I actually would be the best person for the job. And so having that was what saved me.
So it sounds like, unlike I think a lot of people, you created a self-fulfilling prophecy that actually really did help you connect the dots forward.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah. Well, those are your words. I love that. Connect the dots forward. I really like that. I never thought of it that way, but it's great. So we know a good amount now about your background and I guess you're currently a recovering academic in some ways, right?
Yes.
I call myself a fundraiser in recovery. I used to do fundraising. So I feel I know what it feels like to be in recovery in that way. So tell us about what you're up to these days. What are you doing now? We know now about some of the building blocks that got you here, but what does here look like now? I know you have a new job that you just got in the last year.
Well, I'm a writer and that job. Yes. I had a kid.
Yes, you had a child.
I was like, oh my goodness, what did I get hired to do that I don't
know. She's like, what job are you talking about? I'm like, hey, the most important job in the world.
So true. So true. Yes, I had a daughter. She is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Phenomenal. And we talk about the next transition, what that did to my business.
Yeah.
Explosive.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I spend most of my time writing, and I built a platform called That Seems Important. Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot about these topics. Like a lot of our goal is to normalize the strategies and the weirdness that it takes before any of this makes sense. Because a lot of it, like I call it being in the arena. Mm-hmm. It comes from the Theodore Roosevelt quote, "Man in the Arena." If you guys haven't seen it, Google it, read it. It's phenomenal. But the crux is there are people in the arena, which are the players on the world stage. And then there are people in the sidelines. And the people on the sidelines in the nosebleed section, like it's easy to tell you how someone in the arena could have done better and could have shifted their form and won and edit their strategy and analyze all the things. But to actually be in the arena and get your ass kicked and get back up, that's the game. That's the game. And that's what's hard. And that's what's interesting in my book. And so I write a lot about that using marketing and entrepreneurship as sort of what the medium it comes in. But truly, I believe that entrepreneurship is a mindset. And it really has nothing to do with whether or not you start a business. It's how you approach life.
I just want to, I want to highlight that and put big stars around it, because I think especially in this day and age, I don't care what generation you are a member of, if you are not looking at your life in some kind of entrepreneurial way, especially your career and your work, I think you're putting yourself in some jeopardy. Mm-hmm. Because it's a very different world now, and you have to think, I think, very creatively and resourcefully. You have to question things, and you have to really look deep down inside and figure out what is most important to you, what really matters to you, what's gonna really keep your life energy going. Not to sound too woo-woo about it, but I think that's what you're speaking to. And it sounds like for you, this kind of mindset comes pretty naturally. It's not like you have to work hard at asking yourself those questions. Finding the answers may be challenging, but it does sound like very naturally you have asked yourself those questions along the way, and that's part of how you've connected the dots going forward, right?
I love that it looks like that. I hope so. I mean, they definitely come up for me, probably more than most, but I mean, I am in a constant stronghold with self-doubt. I am perpetually.
Really?
Oh my God. Every day, all day long. The difference is I remember reading in a book that the people that I admired, all of them have fear, but the only difference between them and me is that they feel the fear and act anyway. And I loved that because I thought, oh, okay. So the point is not to eradicate the self-doubt and the fear. The point is to act in spite of it. And so like, that's the only thing that I am good at, is probably making a fool out of myself in public and being like, haha, I did it. But that's actually the game. And that's the secret, is that is the skill, is being able to face that fear and recognize that you're never actually going to have it figured out. And you're never going to not have self-doubt. Like with one self-doubt comes the next thing. Like, for example, as soon as my website started to get some traction and I got some readers and some that were people that I admired as well, the writing actually got worse, which doesn't make any sense, right? You think that the hard part is getting started, which it is. But then you're pretty much always getting started, because you reach the next level, and the next level comes with its own hurdles, which is, holy shit, people are paying attention now.
Right,
so
right.
Now you have to sound good. You promised them that you were good, then you showed them you were good, but now you have to deliver. I have a friend, my friend Shannon always calls it like, the hardest thing in football is being the guy who won the Heisman Trophy after you won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
And
the stakes are a lot higher then,
bingo.
Right?
Bingo. And it's a metaphor for all of this. It's that the fear, the self-doubt, the questioning yourself, do I have what it takes? Am I good enough? Is this going to work? Will I fail? Am I going to look stupid? Like, that never goes away.
Yeah.
It never goes away. It's just a decision you make in your mind about whether or not you are willing to endure the sandwich that comes with that to get to that next level. And for me, what I felt, and I would say this is my actual answer to your question, it's not that these were natural. It was that it was so uncomfortable for me to sit with that self-doubt that I would rather have at least tried and told myself, look, you failed for real, than having failed in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love the way you frame that, because you're speaking to something that is such a human experience. And in coaching, we call those gremlins. And I talk to people all the time about that they have these committees in their heads. And there's the one that says, oh, you'll never make something out of yourself, or you're too this, or you're not enough of that, or no one will listen. And, and then it's sort of, be careful what you wish for, right? Because what you're speaking to is that fear of failure, right? Or that fear of making a fool out of yourself. And then when people start paying attention and they actually like what you're up to, it's almost like there's still that fear, but is it like fear of success now, or fear of what? Like, now that I've gotten closer to what I've been aiming for, now what?
Well, I think why I encourage the metaphor of the arena is because when you are out there putting your work into the world, making yourself a little bit vulnerable, going after the thing that scares you, you start to see patterns. And the things that you were afraid of, like, they will happen. Like, that's the thing. Like, they're not going to not happen.
Yeah.
And but they get less personal, and they derail you less. So I'll give you an example with, I write an email every week to my list, and each week the same 3 responses happen. Category of responses. I get so much praise. Like, this is so great. This is exactly what I need to hear. Oh my God. Then I get I don't get it. This is stupid. And, oh, you have a typo here. And, just criticism is what I put that bucket. And then the other one is questions, curiosities. None of those have anything to do with me. They don't have anything to do with my work. They don't have anything to do with my skill level. They have everything to do with the person reading and where they are in their journey. And so even though my ego loves the praise, so if you're listening, send me praise. Deep down, I know it's more because I hit on a human truth that made you feel seen, made you feel heard, and made you feel understand, which was by design, by the way. So that is on purpose, but that is more about your journey. As much as I would love to take credit for that, but that's about your journey and where you were, and if you needed to hear this in the time that you heard it. And then the criticism is the same. It's either because I'm hitting on something that is personal or making you angry, or it's like the people who point out grammar mistakes. It's like, if you're focused on that, like, let's dig on that. You probably have some things we can unpack with your therapist here. Like, that wasn't the point. Right. And so you start to emerge with these patterns where you you can go back to focusing on what you're trying to do, your mission, your thread, following those dots forward, and getting less derailed by the committee in your head, by those gremlins, because you recognize that those gremlins are the internalization of things that have nothing to do with you. But it doesn't feel that way yet.
No. And I wonder if this comes under the category of something that you shared with me when we spoke earlier. You talked about to unlearn about my worthiness. It sounds like this relates to that.
Oh, yeah.
Unlearn about my worthiness. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh my goodness. Well, you know how you were talking about being a recovering fundraiser.
Right.
And I'm a recovering academic. And part of what I mean by that is there's been a tremendous amount of things that I believe to be true about the world and who I am, because I spent the majority of my time in higher education.
Right.
And the messages, I call them invisible scripts. So the messages that you learn about, or the beliefs that you have about the way the world works, they're not facts because there's no way to prove or disprove them. So it would be something like, I'm not an adult until I'm married and I have a house, right? That's not a falsifiable statement. It's not true or false. It's a belief. And it's socially constructed, and it's something that we could break down. Like in America, those are in proxy indicators of success.
Right.
But does that mean you're not an adult? Of course not. Does your age determine you're an adult? What does it mean to be an adult, right? So those are invisible scripts that guide what we think about ourselves, and they ultimately guide our actions. And so for me, I was accruing so many invisible scripts based on my time in traditional workplaces and academia that told me I wasn't good enough at all times. That you're not smart enough, you're not credentialed enough, you don't have enough experience, you don't have enough talent, you don't have enough name the thing. And here's the interesting thing about those kind of scripts. Sometimes they're true, right? I am not talented enough to be a basketball player. I don't care. Right? Those kind of things don't matter to you if that's not what you're aspiring to do. Where it starts to hurt, and these are actually good indicators that you're on the right track, is when you're pursuing something you actually want.
Yeah.
And then you have a choice of how to respond. So what I learned about myself was I needed something more and something external to be worthy of the life that I wanted, which for me was to have an audience and to be a writer and to be a thought leader and to have a platform that helps people and to have impact. I thought I needed a lot more credentials, right? You do need credentials for certain things. I don't want to discount this. I actually don't agree with the anti-higher education movement. I think that credentials are important, and I don't want a doctor that's not obsessed with being licensed.
Right.
But when we're talking about digital marketing or things that aren't, where someone's life is at stake, it's a little bit of a different conversation because you do have to take a bet on yourself. Yeah. And at a certain point, you also have to do your due diligence. So there's a difference between having credentials that determine whether or not you're good enough and just believing you're good enough, and then also doing your friggin' due diligence to make sure the work is really friggin' good, because it should be. Because the truth is, in my space, for example, which is online marketing, entrepreneurship, personal development, there are a lot of charlatans. And there are a lot of people with no credentials saying dumb stuff. There's also a lot of people with credentials saying dumb stuff. And the cure to dumb stuff is not credentials. Right? The cure is smart people who can be louder than those influencing your opinion. And in order for me to unlearn all of that, all of those scripts that said, oh God, if you don't have XYZ, you're going to be one of those people. I had to identify those invisible scripts because I didn't know they were there. That's the whole point of invisible. It's really hard to see them. And often it takes us years to know what things we've assumed about the world and internalized. I love your metaphor of gremlins because I think that's also a nice way to externalize it. Because we don't believe they're gremlins or that they're that committee. We just think that they're our thoughts and that they're truths about the world. So step one is to hire someone like Tammy who can help you identify these things.
Agreed.
And then once you've identified them, you have a choice on how to handle them.
Exactly.
You can evaluate them. And I want to steal something from Liz Gilbert, who we've talked about her before. People are on the fence about how they feel about her. And I was one of those people until a friend of mine dragged me to a book signing. And she was reading a passage from Big Magic and doing a Q&A. And someone asked her a question and they said, okay, what do you do when those "who the hell do you think you are" voices come in your head?
Yeah.
And she goes, well, I have 3 answers for it. Number 1, I realize they're just asking. Like, they don't have a gun to my head. They're just a voice.
Right.
So let's put it down a notch here on how the scariness level it is for me.
Right.
But I have an answer. So number 1, I am a woman in a time in history where women can have a voice, and I have a voice. So I sure as hell am going to use it.
Yeah.
Number 2, I am a writer. I have always been a writer. I never said I was going to be a good one. Stop holding me to that standard. Number 3, I'm a child of creation, therefore I have the right to create. And that is my answer.
I love it.
You are a badass.
Yeah.
I loved that. I love that she came prepared with an answer to the gremlin.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really matter what your answer is, but just to find one to say, like, you are allowed to want the things you want.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Especially here in this country.
That's
right?
exactly the point.
I mean, we have a lot of privilege here when it comes to our voice and where we take a stand. But we're not that isn't the point of this conversation. So I'm curious about your business. So you were a writer. Mm-hmm. Do you also work? Do you have clients who work with you?
So I ran a marketing.
What's your business model?
My business model. So up until recently, I ran a virtual coworking space, which was a community for solopreneurs, actually called the Arena, based on what we spoke about earlier. I've recently shut it down for reasons we can discuss, but it ended up not being a sustainable business model. Okay. And I have gone back to, now we're doing writing workshops. And I'm working on a book. So my time is actually a little, I was a little bit distracted from building it, even though it's amazing and wonderful. And if anyone listening wants community, email me. And maybe if we have enough demand, I'll start it up again. Yeah. But yeah, I believe in something called product founder fit, which is a phrase I made up. And product founder fit. So we talk a lot about product market fit. It's finding the market, and that's kind of where you hit traction. Yeah. And it's the most important thing for a business. I think one of the things we discount is there's the business you can run and there's the business you should. And that is a conversation I'm really interested in because for example, I built a company I hated. My marketing consultancy was very successful and it was killing me inside. It ended up being a huge drain on my time and on my mental health, on my physical health. It wasn't any better than having a boss. I had almost replaced one boss with 12, which they call clients. Okay. And for me, now, mind you, I only discovered this because I had friends who were really beautiful and talented at this. They could have clients and they loved client management. They loved it. I missed writing. I would get in and I would find that my clients would come to me and they'd say, listen, we love you because you tell the truth and you say it like it is. And we'd like to hire you to do the thing you told us not to do. And so it would always end up being a bit of an ethical dilemma for me. Yeah. Where I would be paid well and beautifully to do projects for people I respected and admired and adored, but never actually doing the strategies that I believed should have been implemented. Okay. And that drove me nuts, which is part of why I started my own platform. Okay. And also wanting to have my own voice. I mean, I think that there's a conversation. I mean, you asked about business model and I'm answering a little differently because I think the creative part of this complicates things. And I think in a very important way that a lot of people, running a business is not the hard part. It's finding fulfillment through that business. And so if you want to make money, you can do that. That is not the hard part. Absolutely. I agree. Yeah. And I mean that. I mean, I think for anyone listening, if you're going, oh, that's so flippant. No, if you take emotion out of it, there are so many ways that you can fulfill a need. I mean, there are people I know making $600,000 a year shoveling driveways. You know why? Because snow happens and no one wants to shovel their driveway. Right. So if you fulfill a need like that and you are the person to shovel driveways wherever you live, like that is a market. There are markets for things everywhere, but we are trying not to do that, right? Because we believe we're above it or whatever it is, in part because you're above it, but because you're actually looking for something else. You're not necessarily looking to make the money. You are looking for fulfillment. And that is a different thing. And sometimes they are not the same. Sometimes you should just have a business that brings you money and your fulfillment should be elsewhere. That's right. Absolutely. And that's a fine solution. Yeah. It's a fine solution. You need to know what works for you. And for me, this is my long-winded way of getting to the end of your answer. That's okay. I have found ways to make money that were wonderful, but they kept taking away from my art.
Right.
And in a way that I actually would prefer to spend time on the writing and make it better. This is also related to my new job as a mother, where I have 50% less time and brain space. And I had to be really, really deliberate, going back to our conversation on deliberate choices.
Right.
And I had to kill something I loved a lot. I really loved the arena, and it was really difficult for me.
Yeah.
Really difficult for me because it was working. But there's just no way to do all of the things.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think this is really an important part of what we're here to talk about, which is, thinking through in a really conscious way about making some difficult decisions. It's not just about la-di-da, finding what you love and, basking in the glow. It is about making some difficult decisions or some decisions where you really have to search your heart and soul in some ways to decide what you're going to do.
That's exactly right.
I'm curious what your book is about. Can you share a little bit with us about what it's about? Something we can look forward to.
Yes. We're still rewriting that answer to that question succinctly, but it is effectively this conversation. So I am working on a guidebook, if you will, to the arena. What to expect. What to expect when you're expecting in the arena. But truly, there are these patterns and consistencies to what happens when you put yourself out there. And I think that if we learn to anticipate them, and we are less derailed, because my goal for people is I want you to stay the course. Yeah. And so even though I write about marketing and there are a lot of useful pieces of advice and nuggets on copywriting and sales and those kind of topics, the secret is actually not in that part. The secret is in the ability, it's exactly the same as a career, to, for example, with marketing, try things that don't work. People are so afraid of that. And that is always the marketing secret sauce. Like, you have to keep trying. And what my clients used to do is like, we hired this company, we paid them $100,000 and nothing happened. And you'd look down under the hood. And really what happened was you didn't want to take the time to learn and be uncomfortable. You wanted to do what your competitors were doing. You wanted to follow a template. You didn't listen to the people that you were trying to serve. And as a result, you ignored all of your instincts. And that's why it didn't work. Often, to get marketing to work, you have to do things over and over and over again to figure out how to speak your market language, to figure out who your market is, because often who you launched with, it isn't who they actually are at the end. To know what they want, because what you think isn't reality, what their reality is reality. Their perceptions are reality. And that's what you have to speak to, and then figure out how to talk on their level. And so it's that ability to anticipate that this is the journey. Like, that's where you start to see success, is when you see those entrepreneurs, and I say that as a mindset, who aren't afraid of showing up, falling down, failing over and over again in front of their peers, recognizing that their peers aren't their market. They're not their market. Like, Tammy, it doesn't matter what other coaches think about you at all. No. And yet we get so derailed by that, because those are the gremlins in our head, because that's who we're talking to. That's who we're spending our time around. So the book seeks to address some of this and hopefully point it out in a way that makes people more desensitized to doing it and more willing to jump in and do the work and show up. Or as we say in Alt MBA, ship.
And I'll just mention that Alt MBA is a program from Seth Godin.
Yes. Right? Yes. People should apply to it. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people who have done it, who have benefited greatly from it. Oh, when can we expect? I can't wait to read the book.
Thank you. I don't have a release date yet, but come follow me on That Seems Important, and I will give updates in real time.
So that's a good place for people to find you is on thatseemsimportant.com.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And are there any other places people can follow your work or find you?
Absolutely. Come find me on Medium, tweet at me. I'm trying to get better on Twitter. So find me at Margo Aaron.
Okay, great. Margo, this has been enlightening, grounding, and energizing all at the same time. I just love, I agree with everything you have to say. I really do. And I think this is exactly a lot of the points you made that I think can inform our listeners are many of the points that I really created this podcast to be about. So I definitely did a great job inviting you to be a guest.
I would agree with you, Tammy. Oh, this was such a pleasure. I love talking to you. You know that.
I love it too. So thank you so much. And for those of you who are listening, all of the resources, some of the books and authors and other things that Margo mentioned, they will all be in the show notes. So tune in, and thanks for listening, everybody. And again, Margo, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Margo Aaron. It was so much fun to speak with her and learn about her personal and professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 014. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you enjoyed this episode with Margo, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find my page at tammygoulerloeb.com/Apple. Thanks for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your fulfillment and satisfaction in your work or other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be a guest on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.